done many interviews where I say I'm proud of being from Wolverhampton. As small as our city is, I'm very proud of being from this place.
Welcome to Every Story Has a Start, a podcast brought to you by the University of Wolverhampton.
Join us as we dive into the captivating journeys of our diverse university community, sharing the human stories that inspire, educate and empower.
Through engaging interviews and active storytelling, we uncover the unique paths and experiences that shape who we are and who we become.
Every story truly has a start.
Subscribe to Every Story Has a Start for new episodes filled with stories that matter.
Hello, I'm Mags from the university's Content and Communications team. Welcome to the University of Wolverhampton's podcast, Every Story Has a Start. This podcast is all about sharing the human stories that inspire, educate and empower. So today I'm talking to Nate Ethan Watson. Born and bred in Wolverhampton, he graduated with a first-class honours degree in public health and is the UK's first transgender rapper. So hi Nate, thanks for joining us today. So if we could just start by talking a little bit about your childhood, about what your aspirations were.
Yeah, so my childhood, like you said, I was born and bred in Wolverhampton, not too far away from where we are now, but I had a great childhood. Where I'm from, you know, it's an estate, it's a council estate. There's a lot of diversity, let's say, where I was brought up, which, you know, this is very important to me, being around diversity, people from different backgrounds. But yeah, my childhood was a happy childhood.
And did you have any kind of childhood dreams or aspirations? You know, when you were young, was there something that you really wanted to do?
Yeah, I think from the time I could probably walk, I always wanted to do music. I ended up actually getting into athletics at, I think, 13 to my late teens. And straight away, as soon as I began athletics, I started running for the country. I used to compete for Wolverhampton and Bilston, but I'd done quite well, so I ended up running for competing for England. But my passion was always music, so that was something that I was always doing from as long as I can remember.
I was going to say, how'd you go from music to athletics?
Yeah, it's a bit of a...
They're very different, aren't they?
Yeah, well, the rhythm, I had rhythm in my feet, rhythm in my hands, so...
Brilliant. So, do you think that university was ever an option? Like you say, you were brought up on an estate and, you know, were other people aspiring to go to university? Was it something that was ever spoken about?
To be honest, no. It was never anything that came into my head, anybody that I could have that experience from around me. So no, as soon as, you know, going through school and after school, you think about going to college, which I did do, done my A-levels. But after that, that was it. I still wanted to continue music, so I never had the thought to go to university.
So in terms of when you were at school, obviously you've said that you went to do A-levels, so, you know, that was at least something that people were advising you to do that in terms of, were people talking to you about potential careers? Did they know that you were interested in music? Were you signposted anywhere or...?
Not really. It was a choice of, do I want to stay on at school and do sixth form or go to college? And I think to me, I just wanted to experience something different as well. I ended up going to a college outside of Wolverhampton. But even then, I didn't complete my A-levels. I think I got to AS, didn't complete my A-levels, but I really enjoyed the courses that I'd done. I went straight into music, into work in a few years after, which was different to anything that I actually studied at college. But yeah.
And were you producing music? Were you like writing? Tell us a little bit about, you know, on the sidelines, were you doing stuff?
So through my life, I've always done music. So as young as 8, I can remember writing music, writing songs, messing about with different objects in the house, trying to create different sounds and whatnot. So that was something I've always enjoyed. Through school, you know, we done GCSE music and things like that. my AS levels, I went on to do performing arts, so it was a bit of a mix between acting and music. Something else, I really enjoyed the acting side of things. But yeah, it was always kind of where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do.
And so you say that you never finished your A-levels.
No.
Tell me a little bit about what distracted you.
I think the age I was 17 when I got into college. I think at that time of life I wasn't as serious about education when I left school. I was a creative, that's what I felt. I wanted to be doing music, be into creative arts in some way. So the education side of things, I kind of felt like I was happy to move on from that at the time.
But you were creating?
Yeah, I was creating, but it was more like a hobby that, you know, something that I really enjoyed. I had dreams of where I wanted to go with music, but, you know, it wasn't something that I had planned. It was just something that I enjoyed to do.
And nobody ever said to you could actually make a career out of being a musician, or was that something that just was not even an option? Or how did your family feel about you not finishing your A-levels?
At the time, I left home quite early as well. So I left home at 17, and I was at college, so I didn't kind of have anybody to tell me to carry on. At college, I kind of kept that to myself. I was starting my own life. As much as I look back now, and I think actually I was really young. I think at that time I thought I was older and more adult than I actually was. So I didn't have anybody telling me, and my mind was saying, right, I'm done with this. I'm onto music now.
And was that unusual, or, you know, the kind of, you know, when you were studying for A-levels, were there other people that were kind of dropping out and wanted to be an adult? And was that the kind of...
I think so. I think especially my circle of people, yeah, I don't want to say it was more like I enjoyed more the social aspect of college, but I actually did at the time. Looking back now, it's shocking because of how much I do enjoy education and being back into education. But at that time, being a teenager and whatnot, that's literally
You'll be
where I was.
surprised how many people do say that, and you know, you feel like you're an adult, but actually you start making decisions based on thinking you're an adult, and people come back to education. So it's very interesting that you say that. So tell me about your kind of, what was inspiring you, and your ambitions then, I'm guessing, were to be a musician. How did you think that you would achieve that goal? Or did you think that you would or you wouldn't? Or
Yeah, I'm actually going back to some of them thoughts and feelings right now, and I think I didn't know how achievable it was. I think being a small city at that time, we wasn't even a city, we were still a town. So I didn't know how achievable that was. Looking at things, I always used to think musicians and artists come from bigger cities. So I'm not sure if I would actually be seen, but my inspirations and kind of my motivations were people like Beverly Knight, who's a very good friend of mine now, Goldie, artists that, you know, were doing amazing things at the time where I was having those kind of aspirations. So that's who I would look up to make me see that it was actually achievable.
And those role models, I guess, were really important to you because, you know, even though they were few and far between, you know, knowing that they came from this area, was that something that, you know, was really inspiring for you?
Definitely. That was the biggest inspiration for me. I've done many interviews where I say I'm proud of being from Wolverhampton. As small as our city is, I'm very proud of being from this place. So yeah, people, you know, like Beverly and Goldie, and that was literally my knowing that I could be somewhere, I could actually do something. So yeah, to actually have that support from obviously Beverly Knight now as well, you know, it's amazing.
And in terms of your family experience, you know, you're obviously coming from a kind of environment where people probably don't leave the area and people go into jobs. And so were they supportive of you? Did you encounter any barriers as such?
Going to university?
Yeah, so just generally because obviously you were very aspirational.
Yeah.
And, did you get the support you needed in terms of people putting you on the right track and helping you out and geeing you on, that kind of thing? Or did you get a sense of actually get a proper job?
I did have a bit of both. Yeah, at the start. In my head, if I set myself to it, I want to achieve it. If I'm passionate about it, I kind of know I'm going to achieve it because I'm going to work hard. I'm going to put everything into it. But again, I think the time of where we were in life at that point, we didn't have many artists out of Wolverhampton, so it was like you live in a bit of a fantasy kind of thing with a lot of people until they actually started seeing me on certain platforms, and that's when things kind of changed and people became a bit more supportive.
And so tell me a little bit about that. So when did you start to achieve a little bit of recognition? And at what point did you think, I really want to study for a degree? Because the two things don't really match, do they?
A lot of years in between, actually. Music, I felt like I could actually achieve something in that. I think it's over 2 decades ago now, to be honest. And I think one of the first things that I'd done that I actually, the tables kind of turned in terms of support was being on Radio 1, going on Radio 1. I became the BBC 1Extra 16-bar champion. So,
and how did that come about?
I think at the time, I was just, I was putting my music out there. I got a call. And
how did you put your music out there?
Well, we didn't have all the social media and stuff that we have now. So it was hard. It was very raw, very authentic. You go to the studio, record, press onto CDs, get the cover, the artwork and everything designed. And then you'd be going around the country selling your CDs at the back of the car boots, walking around with backpacks full of CDs, like selling them after shows and whatnot. So, yeah, I actually done quite well with that.
And that's hard work, isn't it? I mean, you've got to be dedicated to do that.
I think I enjoyed it at the same time. It was more personal, being able to, speak to somebody face to face, somebody who wanted to support you, and buy your music, you had that interaction with that person. Now, with online stuff, it's kind of taken that away a little bit. It's easier in terms of promoting your music and getting your music out there, but you kind of lose that personal interaction with people and people that support you.
Yeah. And what were you writing about? So what was in your head at that time?
From 8 years old, I remember one of the first songs that I wrote, and it was called Zoom Boom, and it was about absolutely nothing. Now I look back, I have no idea what it was about, but it rhymed. So yeah, I think through life it's just been my experiences, more my emotions and my feelings. Though I spent, as happy as I was in my childhood, I did have obviously thoughts and feelings from a young age that, about me. At the time I didn't have no words or any language for how I felt. But, I felt like I was an extrovert, but I was an introvert at the same time. So my introvert kind of thoughts and feelings, I was able to write and, put into music.
And so you're releasing some of that energy really in your writing and your music, even though you didn't at that stage kind of understand why you were feeling that way.
No, I didn't, but
that's interesting.
I've kept a lot of my songs, actually, a lot of books that I used to write, and looking back at them in my later years, it's kind of like, whoa, it's all there, but it's taken me so many years to be able to find the language, but the thoughts and feelings are there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And so do you want to talk a little bit about transition and, those feelings, obviously, the older you got, I'm guessing. Yeah. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so obviously I've transitioned from female to male. It's my 6-year anniversary today. We call it T-versary. Yeah. 6 years since I started my transition today. So, yeah, throughout my life, I knew obviously how I felt. At the time, again, we didn't have the whole online stuff. We didn't have the internet. We had libraries, and it was very restricted being able to find any information on how I felt. I didn't have anybody around me where I was brought up. In fact, there was a lot of stigma towards LGBTQ people. It wasn't something that you would admit openly. And if anybody even knew, you'd kind of, do anything to backtrack and deny it, basically, because of what could come with it. So I went through that for a lot of years.
And just by yourself, like you didn't confide in anybody?
No, I didn't tell nobody. To be honest, the first part of my life, so probably from primary school to early junior school, where it's called, I think infants to junior school. I don't know what they call it now. Yeah. Infants to junior. I actually knew at that time. So I had a friend group, I had a lot of friends on the estate. I was quite popular. A lot of my friends from the estate, we all went to the same school, which was literally next door to us. So the conversations would carry on in school and outside of school. And I was literally, like one of the boys. And I used to say, I'm a boy, I know this, I feel like this. And with my friend group at the time, it was normal. Nobody had any education or any stigmas to know that, okay, this isn't right or whatever. So I was just comfortable, taking how I was feeling, and that was it. Up until I got to, I think, the last year of primary school. And, it was overheard by a few people that obviously did have that stigma and their own thoughts and feelings. So that was a time that I think an awakening for me, because I'd been so open through my life, the early years of my life. I was just really open about it until that time. And that's what made me think, oh, wow, I don't think I should be talking so openly about this. I think it's a bit wrong, like what's going on? So I completely shut down from that point. I never spoke about it again for at least 15 years, 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a long time I never opened up about it again.
Something that went from feeling so natural to you, just suddenly was completely shut down.
Yeah.
But obviously in your head it wasn't. So you were still thinking and...
Yeah, it was kind of like mental torture to go through something like that, knowing that this is how I feel, this is who I am. And then knowing that, no, I can't be like that because society won't accept that. Your friend group, my background and things like that, nobody was, to me, going to ever accept that. So I spent all those years trying to block it out and just be how people wanted me or expected me to be. And that's how I spent many years. And obviously around the time of leaving school, going to college, I was meeting a lot of people. I got into my music. I was going on tour. Even at that point, I was doing like some really amazing things in music. But, I'd go back or I'd go home and I'd literally just shut down. I'd become the introvert again. It was a really emotional time, to be honest, those times were.
And were you kind of channeling all of that into your creativity? Did you find an outlet that, that you were comfortable with during that time? Yeah,
and I think at that time as well, there became a time where my music was more heard. So it wasn't just I was writing my thoughts, my feelings, my songs. Now my songs are actually being heard, and I was recording, I was going on radio and stuff. So it became a thing where, as natural as my writing was, again, I had that restrictions with my writing again. Say I was talking about, as I got into my early 20s and I'd be talking about relationships and love and that kind of stuff, I'd always have to change pronouns at the time. So it was very restricted.
Yeah.
So as much as I was writing my truth, at the same time, it wasn't my complete truth. I'd have to tailor things to be accepted.
And how did that make you feel?
It's something that just became quite normal to me, the fact that I had to do that and hide who I was, hide, again, how I was feeling, not being able to really open up about my truth, basically. So it was really restrictive, but it became normal until I knew it wasn't. And that's when I looked back and I thought, wow, that was actually a lot. It became so normal that I expected to spend the rest of my life like this.
And what was the trigger? What was the turning point for you where you thought, I don't want to hide anymore, I want to be who I am? So was there like a defining moment? Or
Yeah, that was, I think, my later 20s, and I just started working with new management, new labels, and at the time I had, I was getting quite far in music, and there was a few music deals on the table for me to choose. Some very big people, actually some very big record labels. So I had 3 deals on the table, and I knew whichever one I was going to sign, I was really going to catapult with my music. And that was the time where I said, whoa, I don't think I can do this. I've spent all these years on tour and doing music and whatever, and knowing that I'm just running back to hotels and locking myself in and getting emotional and, like really trying to hide those feelings. So I think that was the turning point. I knew that if I sign any of these deals, I'm literally just going to have to live like this forever. It's going to be so hard for me to actually be myself.
And so what, did you talk to one of those companies or to your management?
No, I didn't. Or
did
actually.
you what did you do? Just something radical?
It was quite radical, actually.
I'm feeling that you'd got to a point where you were just going to do something.
Yeah, it was
different.
Quite radical in comparison to where I actually was in music. I just kind of took myself away. I went completely distant for a little bit, and I said, I really need to kind of do a bit of soul searching. I need to get everybody out of my ear, all the stigmas, all the expectations. I just need to be in my own kind of space. And that's when my truth started to come through, and I was like, "What? I can't hide this no more. It's becoming so difficult that, I don't know how I'm going to be able to get through any performances after this. If I do sign anything, I'm going to be constantly on tours. I don't know how I'm going to be able to get through shows, especially, at the time being female. It was a certain look and things that are expected. So there's different things that are expected, obviously, in music, and there's no way on earth I could have pretended to even be that person. So I just had to literally come away from it.
And then you just decided that you were going to be true to yourself?
Yeah, I think at that stage, everything was kind of flashing up, highlighting in me, all my thoughts, my feelings. It was becoming very strong. Now I realised to myself, wow, I've been blocking this so long. Now I've actually got the internet where I can actually look more into this. So I just stopped. I actually started looking into, I didn't know anything to put in. All I was putting in was how I was feeling into Google. And the word transgender was coming back, and then I was reading people's stories, and I was, like, oh my gosh, I'm relating. To be honest, thinking back now, I don't really have many of these conversations so much in depth where I really get to look back. But at this time, I remember looking at the internet and reading these stories and actually breaking down. Even now, I'm actually having a flashback and thinking, wow, yeah, I really broke down, like, reading some of the stories, the fact that I knew now there was other people that felt like me. I spent all these years thinking that it was just me, I'm abnormal, maybe there's nobody else in the world that feels like this. And yeah, it was all there in front of me. So that was kind of my turning point to look more into it. So I always knew who I was, I just didn't have the language for it, and I didn't know there was anybody else or anything that I could have done about it until that point.
So it's quite an enlightening moment.
Yeah.
But also quite, emotional for you.
Definitely.
And then how do you go from being a female rapper to a male rapper? Like all of that, how does that even work?
Yeah.
Because like you say, there's going to be different, expectations for men and women in that world.
Yeah, definitely. I think once, I knew where I was going with it, I didn't have any expectations to go back into music. I thought that as much as I loved it, I thought I need to make peace that this was that life, because I don't think I'm going to be accepted, especially being mixed race, being from a Jamaican background as well. It was just a no-no that, how can I get back on the stage and be this person now, like really be myself and not have, I think I had a lot of fear of what could have happened and, you know, people that I could have lost. And I was ready for all of that. That's how much I needed to transition and go through that. And I knew, you know, it's going to be heartbreaking, probably losing friends, maybe losing family, not being able to do what I love, but this is something that I need to do.
And so you'd made your mind up then?
Yeah. So. Once I knew that I could transition and there was support out there, that was it. I just knew that that's where I needed to go.
That you had to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing at that time, like the trans debate was going on and the people for and people against. I guess you're having to make that decision in that world.
Yeah.
It is even more difficult.
Yeah, I think, again, just seeing, you know, people's outlook and perceptions on trans people was kind of fearful as well at the time. So I didn't have any expectations of anything. I just knew that this is who I am. This is what I need to do. I'm going to go through the process of transitioning. This is solely between me and myself. You know, if I need to go to the woods, that's what I was thinking. I'm going to go off grid, like out of the matrix. I'm going to go off grid. I'm going to go into the woods, spend, you know, a couple of years just there, just finding myself. And obviously that didn't happen, but
no.
that's where I was in my head. Like, I'll lose everything to be who I am.
Yeah. And was it, you know, when you made a decision and then started to do it, was it as scary as you thought it was going to be, or were people much better? Did they respond better than you expected?
A lot better than I expected. So I think, you know, obviously I told my family, I told close people straight away. Not straight away, but so once I made the decision, it's a long process for people transitioning. And I think this is, you know, the inequalities in healthcare that I could talk about all day as well. So once, you know, I made that choice to go down that route, to speak to the doctor and say, this is where I need to be, this is who I am, I had to wait years to even go and see, you know, to even start the process. So at the time I had to have psychological assessments, I had to have some really, you know, intrusive conversations with healthcare providers to make sure, you know, that I'm going on the right track for them. So yeah, it was a hard process, to be honest.
It sounds like it was very difficult for you. So at what stage did you think, I know, I'm just going to go and study for a degree now? Because you've obviously been through like a major transition.
Yeah.
And, you know, how did that idea pop in your head?
I think that's when I actually started transitioning. I started transitioning in 2019. I was called quite soon. I think it was within 6 months. I was called onto the BBC and I had an interview live with Victoria Derbyshire, and that's when, you know, they told me I was known as the UK's first trans rapper. We had an interview live. We were speaking about my experiences, you know, how it came to me transitioning. But
and that must have been surreal for you.
Yeah, that was really surreal.
You know, because that's like telling the world your story.
I think at that point as well, I said, right, because I do know a lot of people, or I'm known to a lot of people, especially through my music. I think at the time as well, I had 2 reasons why I wanted to do it. One, I just wanted to be open with everybody. I felt like I had a lot of support around the world with my music, and I felt at that point that I owed them that, because I felt these people have followed me through my whole music life, but I haven't been completely honest about who I am. So that really made me feel a bit of a way with myself as well. So when they offered me that opportunity, that was one of the reasons I said, you know, yeah, I need to do this. I need to explain what's happened, who I am. And then the other part of it was thinking maybe there is somebody else like me that experienced, somebody from the same kind of background, culture, that is feeling like this as well. You know, even if there's just a couple of people, I would have wanted that, I needed that. So maybe I could be that person for somebody else. So that was the reasons I actually went on there. But yeah, it was still very surreal.
And was it like a bit of a relief then to actually be who you were all those years and to tell people? you know, regardless of the outcomes and whether people would go with you or not. Were you kind of relieved? Was it like a big sigh of relief for you?
It was definitely a big sigh of relief. It was a weight, the biggest weight that I can't even explain how I felt after just being open and saying those words, and you know, just knowing that this is me now. There's no going back from it. There's no hiding. There's no fear for who I am and where I'm going. The fear was more, you know, how people was going to see it. But from the BBC interview, I said, this is gone now. I need to stop this. This is who I am. So I did expect to come off, because there was obviously a lot of press articles and whatnot. So I expected to see the typical comments that I knew would be said. But at the same time, my music at the time, I was doing hip hop. I was a grime MC. Grime is very, you know, it can be quite aggressive. So, you know, you have a lot of battles, which I was having a lot of MC battles. So you're kind of quick-witted and you have to be thick-skinned. So if, you know, I was kind of prepared and I think resilient to some of the comments as well, which I thank for, obviously, my grime MCing days.
Yeah. And so was your choice of a degree, was that kind of informed by, you know, your experiences in healthcare, and so because you chose to study public health? So was there some background to that, and did it kind of link to what you'd experienced?
Yeah.
And did you feel like you might be able to make a difference at some point?
I think so. So when I started touring, I got heavily into music. It was a lot of, you know, touring. I was always on the road. I was meeting a lot of people that was even inspirations for me growing up, starting to work with them, big studios, whatever. And I started to notice, you know, the adrenaline, constant adrenaline. But I felt like it was moving away from reality a little bit. It's like a whole nother world, but I needed something to keep me grounded as well. So I applied for a job in care. So, you know, it was kind of the complete opposite, but I felt, you know, I want to be able to help people as well. I like to care for people. I think especially with things that I'd gone through my life, and thinking that I probably would have, you know, wanted that. And because I've been through certain things, I kind of know that there needs to be that care and support out there for people. And it did really keep me grounded. So, you know, I was going off on tour, coming back through the week and going to work in care. And then I was just constantly like that for years, at least like 8-10 years maybe.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so in terms of your degree and your experience at the university, you obviously came to the University of Wolverhampton to study. Was that because you're local and, you know, you wanted to go to a local university, or?
I wasn't so much thinking about it being local. I would have loved to have, you know, done my education and carried on my education in Wolverhampton, but I was looking for a university that I was going to feel comfortable, a place that I could feel safe regardless. Before I applied for uni, I knew that I was waiting. I was waiting for the day that I was going to medically start my transition. But because of the waiting times, you just never know. It could be 3 years, it could be 8 years at the time. So I just didn't know when it was going to come. But I applied for uni basically from, you know, doing my care work, from working with older adults. I started to work with people with autism. Then I completely just went across the field, mentoring young people, people that was involved in gangs, then people that, you know, was imprisoned with mental health conditions, learning disabilities. So I just completely started to have this passion and interest for people and people's minds, how people thought. So yeah, that's what led me to public health, basically.
And you graduated with the first class.
Yeah.
I mean, how did that feel? You know, you've obviously been on a massive journey there. You'd chosen a university where you said you feel safe. Tell us a little bit more about that, in terms of, you know, any extra support you might have needed as you were studying, and then what it's like, you know, to get that cap and gown and walk across the stage.
Yeah, I think at the start, as I said, I was umming and ahhing at the time. I was still doing music, and I was working at a forensic unit as well. I got really invested and passionate about the patients I was working with and what I wanted them to achieve, how I wanted to better their life. So I started to do things that was related to occupational therapy without knowing that's what I was actually doing with the patients. So it was some of the occupational therapists, the psychologists that I was working with that was like, we really think you need to go to university and get a degree in this and come back and actually, take this more seriously. And that was kind of what triggered me to come to university.
Well, it must have been really difficult, you were transitioning, you were studying and going back to study, like with the assignments and what was that like?
I can't lie, and I'm not gonna lie, it was hard. It was some days was really hard, and I was bouncing between things at the time. So I was doing, sometimes even 15-hour shifts. I was working every weekend. That work kind of overtook how I felt in music, the whole passion and everything I had in music. I knew that, that period of time, it was about me finding myself, and I became more passionate about the work that I was doing with people. But yeah,
and you were still working as well?
Yeah. So I was
the stuff
working.
that you were learning, were you putting that into practice and, seeing the benefits of learning and how it does translate to the workplace?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing,
Yeah, brilliant. So what kind of advice would you give to someone that's thinking at this moment in time, I'd love to go to uni, but I don't come from that kind of background, it's not for me. What advice would you give to somebody that's sitting thinking, I want to make a call and I want to try and get on a course?
I just think that's sometimes our limitations is overthinking. And that was for me, I think when I left school, it was just like, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to get into university, let alone get a degree. It was just an absolute no. Now, when I'm looking back at it, I think there's always a time, like there's always the right time. And when I came to university, it was the right time for me. But I do wish I didn't feel like I was so limited and judge myself from where I came from, my background, how, the environment around me, that kind of limited myself for me to even question going to university. Now I have been, it's like it's the best thing. And I'm not just saying it because I'm on this podcast, but it's literally the best thing that I've done with my life. And as hard as it was, the best 3 years of my life as well.
That's great to hear. And so in terms of your onward journey and your future, so if you were looking forward, what is it you're looking forward to now? Where are you going? Where's Nate going?
I always say I'm just working on myself. I'm loving who I've transitioned, who I've become, because I've just let go of everything, all my restrictions, my limitations, my social society perceptions, things that was, I was taught or made to believe I should be thinking and feeling. I don't have any of that anymore. So it's just about me being in a good place, being healthy, being happy, being able to work with people, connect with people, especially that relate to me in some way. So it's easier for me to be able to support those people. But yeah, I've got an organisation as well called TNB Connect. So that stands for Trans and Non-Binary Connect. And that's something that I started following leaving university. So if I didn't come to university, graduate, I would never have TNB Connect. And that's helped a lot of people around the world. We have people from Mexico, Australia, India come and join us online as a social group for trans and non-binary people. And it's been amazing. We've helped donate clothing to hundreds of people around the country. So if it wasn't for my degree, I wouldn't have done any of this. I wouldn't even thought I could do any of this, to be honest.
It's amazing journey. Right, well, thanks for taking the time to have a chat with us.
Thank you.
It's been really insightful. It's been a real pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
And good luck with your future. And obviously your story hopefully will inspire lots of other people.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Subscribe to Every Story Has a Start for new episodes filled with stories that matter.